Eleanor had lived 59 years with a quiet rhythm, her days filled with routine and memories that sometimes felt heavier than the present. Yet this morning something stirred within her as she looked at the lake outside her window, sunlight dancing across the rippling water, and she decided, almost on a whim, to enroll in a swimming class at the community center, thinking perhaps it was time to reclaim a piece of herself she had long forgotten. A piece that once thrived on movement, challenge and a quiet thrill of freedom. And so she drove through familiar streets with a flutter of anticipation and nerves coiling in her stomach, unsure if she was simply chasing fitness or something deeper, something she could no longer name. When she arrived, the smell of chlorine and the soft echo of splashing water greeted her, and her heart gave a little leap she hadn't felt in years, a mix of fear and excitement that made her palms sweat and her throat dry. And then she saw him, Adrian, her instructor, younger than anyone she had imagined noticing her, with a kind smile that carried warmth, confidence, and an easy charm that made Eleanor's pulse skip. And as he introduced himself, his eyes meeting hers in a way that felt personal, attentive, she felt a quiet jolt of awareness, that subtle recognition that sometimes comes when two people notice one another fully in a fleeting instant, and she reminded herself, firmly, that he was just a teacher, she was just a student, this was just a class. Yet the way he spoke, encouraging without patronizing, correcting gently without harshness, made her feel capable, alive, and curious in a way she hadn't felt since long ago, before life had demanded practicality and caution and left the hearts longing to collect dust in quiet corners. The first lesson was awkward, her movements clumsy, the water heavier than she expected, muscles stiff and uncooperative, but Adrian's calm patience, the soft guidance of his hands as he corrected her form, the way he noticed her progress even in tiny increments, made her feel seen, truly seen, and with every tip of his head, every word of reassurance, she felt a warmth spreading inside, a mix of pride, gratitude, and something more she dared not name, a flutter that lingered in her chest long after she had left the pool, drying her hair and pulling on her coat as the crisp air hit her skin, and she walked home with a strange energy that made her hum softly, a private thrill, a hint of something daring, a whisper that life might still surprise her. The following days became a rhythm of anticipation, Eleanor looking forward to lessons with a feeling that startled her because she hadn't looked forward to anything in a long time, the nervous excitement building in her stomach as she imagined Adrian's smile, his laughter, the easy way he moved through the water, correcting and guiding without pressure, and when she entered the pool, the nerves mixed with determination, eager to impress herself and perhaps, secretly, him. She practiced diligently, relishing the feel of the water against her skin, the steady rhythm of strokes and breathing, each day improving, each day feeling more confident, and in these moments Eleanor noticed the little things that made Adrian different, how he remembered details about her progress, the way he encouraged her when she struggled, how his eyes lingered just a beat longer than necessary when he offered praise, how his voice carried warmth and care that seemed to float just for her, and though she chastised herself for noticing, for allowing her thoughts to wander into uncharted territory, she could not deny the pull she felt, a subtle attraction, a stirring in her heart she had long believed dulled by age and circumstance. One afternoon as the sun streamed through the high windows, making the water shimmer like gold, Eleanor finally managed a stroke she had been practicing for weeks, a perfect glide that left her breathless and proud, and as she emerged from the water, Adrian approached to adjust her posture, his hand brushing hers lightly, almost accidentally, yet Eleanor felt the spark as if it were electricity, her pulse racing, her mind swirling with emotions she could not name, and in that moment, a quiet intimacy blossomed, fragile and tentative, and she realized that this was more than learning to swim, it was learning to feel again, to open herself to life and connection in ways she had abandoned for too long. She left the pool that day with a head full of conflicting thoughts, excitement, guilt, curiosity, and a soft, unspoken longing, walking home slowly, noticing how her heart beat faster at memories of the small gestures, the gentle smiles, the warmth of Adrian's presence, wondering if he too felt the pull, the quiet connection that seemed to grow stronger with every encounter, and that night, lying in bed, she traced the patterns of sunlight on her walls in her mind, replayed the way his eyes had met hers, the casual closeness, the laughter that lingered like music in her memory. And she felt herself at the edge of something she had almost forgotten was possible, hope, desire, the thrill of unexpected connection, and she knew that when she returned for the next lesson, nothing would feel the same, that the water, the pool, and the young instructor would hold a promise she could neither ignore nor fully understand, a promise that made her heart ache with anticipation, and Eleanor wondered quietly, almost to herself, whether it was foolish to hope, whether she had the courage to feel again, whether she could navigate the tender currents of attraction, longing, and rediscovery. And as she drifted off to sleep, the question remained delicate and insistent. Could a woman of 59 allow herself to believe that the heart could still stir, that love or something like it could bloom unexpectedly in the gentle shadow of a swimming pool, with a young coach who saw her not as past her time but as alive, vibrant, and achingly human? And would she dare to embrace the chance, or would the tides of fear and caution pull her back into safe, quiet waters, leaving the spark to flicker only in memory until another day? Eleanor returned to the pool the following week with a fluttering heart, the memory of Adrian's gentle touch and warm encouragement replaying in her mind, and as she stepped onto the edge of the water, she noticed him waiting, the sunlight catching the strands of his hair and the easy smile that seemed to make the entire room brighter. And immediately, her nerves mixed with excitement, a potent combination that made her palms sweat and her breath catch. And as they began the warm-up stretches, Adrian's attention was focused on her form, his voice calm and reassuring, but there was a softness in his tone that made Eleanor's chest tighten in a way that was unfamiliar yet thrilling, reminding her that even after decades of living cautiously, the heart could still recognize sparks, could still respond to gentle connection and human warmth. And as the lesson progressed, she found herself moving more fluidly through the water, strokes smooth, body lighter, as if the pool itself welcomed her return, and she realized that her progress was not just physical, it was emotional, each movement breaking through invisible barriers she had built over years, walls formed from loss, disappointment, and a lingering belief that life's surprises had passed her by. And yet here she was, smiling beneath the surface, feeling the current and rhythm, noticing the subtle attentions Adrian paid, the small corrections that lingered a moment longer, the way he lingered by her side, guiding with a patience that was almost intimate without ever crossing boundaries. And Eleanor felt a shiver run through her, not from the chill of water but from a growing awareness that her heart was learning again to pay attention, to anticipate, to hope. And as she floated on her back for the first time in years, eyes closed, sunlight dancing on the ceiling, she felt a serenity she had not known she craved. Yet when she opened her eyes, Adrian was there, hovering, smiling, as if he had been waiting for her to discover something within herself, and the closeness made her cheeks warm, the sound of his voice soothing, and she realized that this connection, tender and unspoken, was becoming the highlight of her week, a secret thrill she dared not admit aloud, yet one she cherished deeply. And after the lesson, as they walked toward the lockers, Eleanor found herself lingering, prolonging the moment, exchanging small talk, catching glimpses of his expression, noticing a twinkle in his eyes that mirrored her own hidden excitement, and she wondered if he too felt the quiet pull, the subtle magnetic current between them, a connection that was more than instructor and student, more than polite attention, something delicate and fragile, yet undeniably real. And when he asked her about her life outside the pool, she hesitated, then shared a bit more than usual, surprising herself with how easy it felt, as if he could understand the quiet spaces within her, the loneliness and longing that had become part of her story. And he listened, really listened, nodding, his empathy gentle, his presence grounding, and Eleanor felt a trust growing, a fragile intimacy, and she caught herself noticing the way his hand brushed against hers when he handed her a towel, the brief contact sending a spark she could not ignore, the kind of spark that reminded her of youth but with a depth that only experience could bring. And as the week passed into evening, she found herself thinking about him more than she had anticipated, wondering what he might be doing, if he was thinking of her as she thought of him, and the longing was sweet and sharp, filling the quiet spaces of her apartment with color and warmth, replacing the muted routine she had grown used to. And soon a pattern emerged. Eleanor arrived at the pool not only to swim but to see him, to feel the subtle tension of shared glances, the unspoken encouragement that seemed to pass silently between them, a secret language formed of smiles, small gestures, and the unassuming intimacy of presence. And the emotional pull grew stronger when he complimented her improvements, the way her strokes had become more confident, more elegant, and in those moments, her body responded as much as her heart, a subtle awareness of attraction she had not expected, and she began imagining small daydreams, playful, innocent, yet tinged with the kind of longing she had buried for decades, and Adrian, for his part, was patient and professional, but Eleanor could sense something tender in his attentions, a curiosity, an appreciation, a recognition that she was not just a student but a woman whose spirit had survived loss and disappointment, whose heart still sought connection and joy. And as the sessions continued, they shared quiet laughs over small mistakes, encouragement over successes, and a growing comfort in each other's presence that neither could deny, a bond forming gently, naturally, as if the water itself conspired to wash away hesitation. And one afternoon, Eleanor lingered in the pool after class, pretending to practice strokes while secretly watching him adjust another student's form, feeling a pang of jealousy and yet a surge of desire, realizing with clarity that she wanted more of his attention, more of the warmth he brought. And when Adrian finally looked her way, their eyes met and something passed between them. A glance, a smile, heartbeat that spoke volumes, a delicate acknowledgement of mutual understanding, of connection, of a quiet attraction that neither could fully name. And Eleanor felt a thrill of courage, a desire to bridge the unspoken gap, to let herself feel fully again, even if only for a fleeting moment. And as she left the pool that day, wrapped in her towel, hair damp and skin tingling from the exercise, she walked slowly, savoring each sensation, each memory of his presence, and thought of the coming week, of the lessons yet to be shared, of the ways she could allow herself to grow closer without crossing boundaries. And she realized that she was living again in a way she hadn't dared in years, her heart fluttering with hope, curiosity, and the gentle ache of longing, a longing that made her feel alive, vibrant, and achingly human. And Eleanor knew, deep in her chest, that something significant had begun, a quiet story of rediscovery, attraction, and emotional awakening, and that the next time their paths crossed in the pool, the water would not just carry their strokes, it would carry the subtle tension, the unspoken connection, the delicate promise of possibility. And Eleanor could not wait to see where it might lead, even as the edges of fear and uncertainty brushed against her excitement, reminding her that life, at any age, held surprises worth feeling, worth risking, worth hoping for. The days after Eleanor's quiet realizations at the pool became a whirlwind of emotions, each morning bringing a mixture of anticipation and nervous excitement as she prepared for her lessons, her mind replaying every small interaction with Adrian, imagining conversations, glances, and the subtle touch of his hand. And as she walked into the familiar space of the swimming hall, sunlight streaming across the water, she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in decades, a recognition that life could still surprise, that the heart could still respond. And when Adrian smiled at her from the edge of the pool, the simple gesture sent warmth through her chest, a reminder that connection was possible, that attraction could exist quietly and respectfully. And as they began the session, Eleanor moved with growing confidence, her strokes flowing more naturally, the water becoming an extension of herself, a place where she could release tension, feel strong, and simultaneously feel the pull of something tender and emotional that drew her toward him. And Adrian's attention, careful, patient, and encouraging, seemed to mirror her own unspoken desires, creating a rhythm between them that was subtle but undeniable, a dance of glances, gestures,